Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. In stressful times like these, imagine having a life that's centered around horses, poetry, and campfires. What if, to start your day, your office was a beautiful view of a big sky and mountains? Well, that's the life of my next guest. Waddie Mitchell is with the Western Folklife Center, and he's here to tell us about the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering. Waddie, welcome to American Voices.
Thank you, sir. I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud to get to visit with you.
Well, that's great. How'd you get interested in cowboy poetry?
We didn't ever call it that. It was just poetry when I was a kid. I grew up on a ranch that was 60 miles from town. 30 of that was dirt road. We were 14 miles from the nearest neighbor. We didn't have electricity. So We did the strangest things at night. We talked to each other. And in that, when you live remote like that, you got guys that are kind of expected to get in the visits around the table at night. And every once in a while, Cowboy would spit a poem out. When I was a kid, I did not get introduced to Dr. Seuss. So I was introduced to Curly Fletcher, and I was introduced to Bruce Kiskadden, and I was hearing about cowboys tying a knot in the devil's tail and hearing cowboys talk about a horse that kept them from getting in trouble with just his ears, letting them know that there was somebody out there watching them.
Mm-hmm.
It just was my TV. It was my source of letting my imagination go.
So all of these are characters in poetry that you had as a kid, right?
Right, exactly. They were authors. And this isn't a new genre at all. It's been going on, but only ranch people and cowboys ever really had a chance to use it. We just thought city folks wouldn't like it.
So why did you decide you had to communicate through poetry, or you wanted to?
Well, from the time I was pretty much just a kid, I was able to take a perfectly nice song and make it body. And just for us kids behind the barn, but I knew I had I could rhyme things.
Uh-huh.
And it was really when I was back from the service in 1973 and started a family. And by the time 1977 rolled along, I had 3 kids on the ground, and I had life experience enough that I thought I could start writing my own. Now I look back on it and think there's no experience by the time you're 27, but it got me started, and it gave me an opportunity to re-examine my life on a pretty regular basis, just by writing down the questions I had in my mind or the answers I found.
Yeah, that's for sure. So let me ask you, can you give us one of your poems?
Oh, I'd be glad to. I sure would. I call this one The Belle of the Ball. I drove her all right to the shindig that night. Of course, I said it was just for the ride, but it probably brought me some dances, I thought, as I walked with her proudly inside. I paid our way in. We got her hand stamped, and then I was ready to go shake a leg. But we were met by some guys with stars in their eyes before I'd hung my hat on the peg. One asked, "May I, ma'am?" She offered her hand, so I waved as they went off to dance. And though she'd gone off with him, I still thought with a grin, won't be long now till I get my chance. By the wall were some chairs, so I took a seat there, and I marveled as she two-stepped around. Her blonde hair would flow as she danced to and fro, her feet barely touching the ground. An hour slipped by. I had no chance to try. It seemed hopefuls were lined to the door, but every once in a while she'd flash me a smile as she waltzed past me out on the floor. I was just going to go ask when Miss Tucker come past, all 5 foot and built somewhat round. She insisted one whirl, and I'll tell you that girl partner flung me plumb out of town. I barely recouped when Granny Coberry swooped me up for a Varsuvian, then a schottish with Trish, who was once quite a dish. But all things up someday fall down. It was becoming apparent that with her full card, I daren't even dream of a dance with her. Besides, why would she want to waste time with me when I was just one nice chauffeur? So, except for one trip to the truck for a nip, I demoted myself to wallflower. I watched 2 flasks abused and 1 fight defused, and Miss Tucker make cowpunchers cower. Seemed I'd sat there for days. And though I tried different ways, I couldn't get close to her at all. I don't know what I expect, I guess. That's what you get when you come with the belle of the ball. I wished I'd stayed at the ranch when the band yelled, "Last dance!" When I turned to see standing right there by a whole herd of men doing their best to crowd in was that gal with the pretty blonde hair. She winked me her charm, took hold of my arm. All them fellers were sure looking sad when she said through the noise, "I'm real sorry, boys, but the last dance I saved for my dad."
That's great.
Well, you see the difference there. This is back to the Robert Service kind of poetry, the storytelling poetry, and
Right.
you try to do it in the dialect of the characters, and we hope that it's fun. It doesn't have to be so heady, although there's a lot of it in this genre. But being light is nice too.
Right. It tells a story.
Right.
Let's talk a little bit about the Western Folklife Center. What do you offer people?
The Western Folklife Center is 38 years old now. Well, actually, it's older than that. Hal had started probably 5 years before that, but it became the host of the National Cowboy Poetry Gathering back in '85. And what it was looking for is just a bunch of the folklorists from different states, mostly Western states, were all getting excited. They're finding all these ranch folks and cowboys that just for the fun of it are writing this poetry, and they thought it'd be very interesting if we could get them together and come out to Elko, Nevada in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the winter, to spew poetic for a weekend. And we asked them, they came. We expected 100 people. 1,000 showed up that first morning.
You're kidding.
And no, not at all. And within the 3rd year, we were up to around 5,000 people, and it's just grown since. It's a pretty fantastic music.
What kind of people do you meet there at the Cowboy Poetry Gathering?
There's people that come from Europe. We get a lot of people from New York City and all over up to Maryland, and we get them from San Francisco. So with the live recitation, then people can figure out, this is what it's supposed to sound like, and can go to reading poetry and enjoy it.
Well, you all feel connected?
Usually by the end of the weekend, we do. Yes. I think if you came back, you'd fit into the group just almost immediately. These are people that are just out to have a good time without having to do it the way kids now want to do it.
Well, get ready. I might be coming out. Have you seen people who they thought maybe this was a stretch for them, and then they get there and they find it's something new by being there?
I see old guys come. Mama made them come. Mama made them shower up after they worked all day, and they'll sit down in there in a row and cross their arms, and I'll have that look on their face. Go ahead, try to entertain me, kid. And pretty quick, you see their arms uncrossed and their smiles on their face, and they'll come up and say, I've been looking for this all my life. I just didn't know what I was looking for, but now I know.
Is that right? And what do you say then?
Oh, I usually say it's pretty nice, isn't it, partner? You took a while to get here, but this is where you belong.
Yeah, I'll bet. That's great. What do you love most about reciting poetry for an audience? How does it make you feel?
Well, there's all kinds of different things, but I suppose the best feeling I have is it's like a long introduction to yourself without sounding like bragging. And so you've let them know who you are, and when you get off the stage, you've got a lot of best friends.
I think that's a beautiful way to say it. Let them know who you are without bragging.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm writing that down, Waddie. I think that's really a good point.
You know, honesty is not something you give somebody immediately after meeting them. And intimacy is not something you give people until you know them pretty well. And I spit it out there at them the whole time. And they're not thinking that I'm, overstepping my boundaries, because I've got a story and it's happening to another character. And it's happening in another place. Mm-hmm. And so it's just comfortable for them.
Right. The oral tradition goes back thousands of years. People used to sit around the fire and they used to talk for days. And that's what you're doing at the Cowboy Poetry Festival.
Yes, sir, it is. And we're awful proud of that. And there's an awful lot of good music. We've got the old-time music, and we've got these kids coming in the same genre, but adding their own, signatures to it, and it's just a lot of fun.
Tell us about some moments that have happened at these poetry gatherings that were memorable for you.
Well, there's a fellow named Buck Ramsey. He was loved by all of us, in a wheelchair for a number of years, had a horse wreck, and it become paralyzed from the middle back down. And he was up in his wheelchair, and he wrote one of the most classic poems I've ever heard. He recited it to us. It got scary when he got done because the crowd did not react for a good 5 seconds. And you know how long that 5 seconds can be.
That's for sure.
But when they erupted, it was almost chaos. People recognized a great piece of literature and stood up happy that they were the first ones to get to hear it.
That's a great story.
One time, there was a fellow there, a bootmaker there, and we had him over showing the art of bootmaking. And then when he wasn't busy doing that, you could slip in there and get an order from him. Well, I waited and I slipped in there. He took my other boot off and he was measuring my feet. And we were talking about the vamps and we were talking about the tops. And did I want some inlays and how many rows of stitching did I want? And all this stuff was just coming at me. And then he told me how much they'd be. Well, I was a cowboy with 5 children at the time and making maybe $1,100 a month. Of course, I had my house and my beef and everything, but I could not afford that. And I'd given him a down payment, and I said, well, you keep the down payment, and then I'll try to save up money and get these years later. The very next year, he came to the poetry gather, and he was measuring everybody's feet and showing people how he made boots. And he looked over at me and he says, your boots are right over there. And I said, I can't pay for them. He says, they're paid in full.
How about that?
And yeah. This is the kind of people and the artists. And, they're the kind of country folks that just feel obligated to help their neighbors.
Yeah, but when you're up there, you're reciting, you're performing,
Yes, sir.
Not everybody can do that. So what is there in you that makes you like performing?
Well, I suppose the main thing is I don't have to be anybody but me. I don't think I could be anybody than me. I would be a terrible actor. I just can't say words other people wrote. But I'm plumb comfortable up there knowing that all I have to do is be me. And what a relief that is. It just takes any burdens off your shoulders.
You know, you sound like you really enjoy life, Waddie.
Well, I think you and I aren't too far off on age, and I'll tell you what, it takes a long time to figure that out, but I'm coming into it late, but I, by golly, am going to start enjoying this life a whole lot more. Yes.
Have you had any people who you think their lives have changed because they've heard these great poems? Anybody ever come up to you and say, you know, you changed my life?
I got to tell you, there's been many. There's been people from back east say, we moved out to Colorado or we moved out to Wyoming. I mean, they came here, they find this tribe of people that they just feel like they're comfortable in. And that tribe of people welcome them with open arms. And yes, we've had a lot of people come up and say, this has changed our lives.
I mean, what is it that they felt themselves in touch with that they hadn't been before they heard you recite the poetry or somebody else?
Actually, what they'll do is they'll come out and it's not just the poetry. They come thinking it's just the poetry, but with the poetry and the music, but it's all the camaraderie. It's also the dress. It's also the way of looking things, I think, the perspective that comes from somebody that's lived out with Earth all the time. And where they've come from, people think they're going to conquer nature somehow. Mm-hmm. And they keep forgetting that nothing conquers Mother Nature. Nothing. And so this puts a little more of a humble attitude on people. It's the tribe. That's what we are. We're a tribe.
Well, listen, Waddie, thank you so much for talking with us. It's really been great. I really appreciate you being here on American Voices, and I think the kind of things that you do are exactly what we need right now in this country. And so I just want to salute you and the Western Folk Life Center and the Poetry Gathering, and who knows, you might find me out there sometime.
Well, if you get out this way, I usually know where there's a dead cow we can eat and where there's a cold beer we can drink.
Okay, I can't say no now, that's for sure. I've been speaking with Waddie Mitchell of the Western Folk Life Center. To find out more, visit us on Facebook. Our show page is American Voices with Senator Bill Bradley. Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.